Hey there guys, this is your host Richard with another marvelous video. Predators have been coming to Earth since time immemorial. They've mostly been seen stalking and killing worthy prey for sport. But times have changed and these predatory hunters from the stars are now seen being hunted for a change. Well, this brings us to Tyler Swain, a long-lost predator hunter, and today's video will be all about him. Stay tuned till the end of this video as we cover Tyler Swain and all his comic book appearances, along with the other major characters in the comic. So, are you ready? Let's dive right into the video then. But before we get into our explanation, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Tyler Swain? So before we dive right into the comics to get a detailed idea of who Swain is and what his history is with the Predators, here's a quick briefing on the character to get an idea of him in general. Swain served himself as a soldier of fortune and worked for a private military contractor in Afghanistan. At some point during a Taliban raid, a Predator emerged out of nowhere and started brutally slaughtering both parties. Despite seeing his squad mercilessly killed by this Predator, Swain chose to hide on purpose instead of battling the creature. Years later, his so-called run-in with the Predator led him to join millionaire Jaya Soam's team of the Hunters, a top-secret unit of soldiers and weapons specialists committed to wiping out every trace of these extraterrestrial hunters. Of course, Swain wasn't entirely honest about the events of his earlier encounter with the Predator and concocted a believable lie to his new squad mates, telling them that a mortar blast blacked him out before the massacre took place. However, in due course, Swain came clean about it and made amends for his lies by sacrificing himself to kill the Predator. Okay, now that we're all on the same page, let's get into exploring the comic issues. Here, we'll delve deeper into two limited comic book series published by Dark Horse Comics. Predator Hunters, a 5-issue comic book series, is a masterpiece of storytelling written by Chris Warner and brought to life with stunning artwork by Francisco Ruiz Velasco. Predator Hunters 2, a 4-issue comic book series, continues the legacy with Warner's gripping narrative and Augustin Padilla's captivating illustrations. Well, without further delay, let's get you hooked on the riveting storylines of the comics as we dive into the intricate plot twists, the intense action sequences, and the deep character development that make these comic book series a must-read for any Predator fan. Predator Hunters Explored. Predators, watch your backs. Somewhere on a remote island, 3 men are seen running through a jungle, desperately trying to find the trail to the sea. By the looks of the trio, they're clearly petrified by something, and they're trying to run as far away as they possibly can. The following comic panel gives us a brief peek into an unidentified being, and in all probability, this is the unknown force that the men are fleeing from. All of a sudden, one of the men gets entangled in a snare, and he's pulled above, much to the remaining duo's horror. While one of the men attempts to help him, he's prevented from doing so by the other one, and they continue to run again. The men reach a particular area in the jungle where they find a shrine made out of human skulls and bones. While this shocks the duo, they're able to hear their friend's voice, who's now literally begging them to save him. The man who had earlier wanted to help his friend, believing that the latter is still alive, almost calls out his friend's name, but he's stopped from doing so by the other, who tells him not to make a sound, further stating to him that the friend is already dead and the one who's making the voice is something else. Anyway, they continue running and reach the edge of a cliff, from where there's nowhere else to go but to leap into the water below. This is when we get to see a tribal-looking predator emerging from within the jungle while mimicking the dead friend's voice. As the predator lets out a wild roar, it becomes clear that it wants to kill the duo. One of the remaining men attacks the predator using his machete, but he doesn't really stand a chance against the monstrous being and is quickly decapitated. As for the last man, he's thrown off the cliff by the predator into the sea below, and as he emerges out of the water, we find he has a dreadlock of the predator in his hands that he managed to tear apart during their skirmish. In the next comic panel, we find former soldier Enoch Nakai working at some remote gas station, busy changing oils in cars and feeding rats to snakes, when he gets approached by multimillionaire Jaya Soams, mercenary Rafael Herrera, and Tyler Swain. From their conversation, it's pretty evident that the group wishes to hire Nakai, make him a part of their covert organization, the Hunters, and hunt down the Predators. With Nakai recalling the events of his encounter with Adol Gashi, or in other words, the big game predator, and later showing the group the Predator corpse, he and Swain get off to a bad start right away. So much so that a fight almost breaks down between them, but despite that, Nakai quits his current job and unwillingly accepts Soam's offer to become a part of their secret unit. On the way, Nakai learns about Herrera, Swain, and Soam's encounters with the Predators. Herrera reveals that he used to work for a defunct drug cartel and that it was during a particular job that he and his men encountered a Predator. While Herrera was able to kill it, it came at the cost of his organization getting ruined in the process and him also losing his family. Swain discloses how he worked for a private contractor in Afghanistan and was accountable for shifting supplies to Kandahar. He adds that during a Taliban ambuscade, he got knocked out by a mortar blast, and when he woke up, he saw a predator who at that time was pretty occupied collecting human skulls as trophies. As per Swain, he wasn't in a state to do anything back then, but now he's more than ready to make as many trophies as he can out of the predators. Lastly, Jaya admits to Nakai that she's the great-granddaughter of Captain Edward Soames, one who killed a marauding alien hunter that terrorized late 19th century London. While Jaya's great-grandfather came back to India after that to serve under the Maharajas, the tradition of hunting the predators was passed down 3 generations, with Jaya finally in the picture and in for some major action. Call of the Wild. Nakai is eventually brought aboard Durga, a private ship that's sailing under false colors as a scientific research vessel. There, he's introduced to Mandy Graves, the sole survivor of an encounter with a bad blood predator in New Jersey. With the ship on its way to the inhabited island Amelia, which is situated right next to the isolated island Kahua, Soames briefs the whole team on their mission while also narrating to them the story of 3 castaways who had somehow found their way to Kahua only to get captured by a tribal predator and placed inside a makeshift prison of bones for many days. The trio was released in due course, and each of them was oddly given weapons. What the men thought was their freedom was basically them being hunted by the predator for sport. Anyway, 2 of the men got brutally slaughtered, and as for the third, he was lucky enough to jump from the edge of a cliff and land straight into the sea below. Well, does this ring a bell? Pretty sure it does, but just in case it doesn't, this is basically how issue number 1 of this comic series began, with 3 men running through a jungle desperately trying to find the trail to the sea. Now that we're clear on that part, we'll let Soames continue the story. The sole survivor had somehow managed to tear a dreadlock from the predator, and he was able to return to the raft that brought him and the other 2 to the island in the first place. The man was ready to take his chances at sea and die rather than die at the hands of the predator. After drifting in the open ocean for days, the man was eventually picked up by a passing vessel, and he died soon after he was able to tell the captain of the vessel his story. Soames also fills in the group with information about the Bunting Islands, how they were settled by Malcolm Bunting, a wealthy and eccentric businessman from New Zealand in the 1800s, and that it's Bunting's great-grandson, Dr. Henry Bunting, who is the current steward. It becomes pretty clear that Soames wishes to covertly investigate the islands to eliminate a suspected predator roaming in the area. With Nakai having doubts about the story, Soames shows him the dreadlock she'd somehow managed to lay her hands on. That's not all. She also ends up showing Nakai her collection of highly advanced weaponry and a vault packed with Yautja weaponry and equipment. Soames further elucidates to Nakai that the equipment has been explored to a great extent to expand on their countermeasures against the predators. When the group finally arrives at Amelia, Soames, Swain, Nakai and Herrera are warmly greeted by the inhabitants of the island, including Dr. Henry Bunting, who personally welcomes the quartet. The second issue ends with the tribal predator hunting and killing a wild boar within the further reaches of the jungle, after which it makes a meal out of its prey and tosses a part of the flesh to a man caged inside the same makeshift prison of bones. Adventures in Paradise. The 3rd chapter begins with Soames sending 2 drones to Kahua later in the evening, as per the plan to conduct a preliminary survey of the area. With the drones flying above a shrine-like structure made of human skulls and bones, Soames tells the team to mark the GPS coordinates and pull the drones. As the drones retreat, the tribal predator observes the aerial vehicle from a distance. The following day, Soames and her group are seen relishing a lavish spread with Henry Bunting. With Bunting asking Soames about the research that has brought her and her team to the island, Soames tells him that they've come to that part of the Pacific primarily for conducting inventories of fish stocks and the conditions of some of the more isolated reefs in the area. This is when Bunting starts explaining to the group how his great-grandfather Dr. Malcolm Bunting was much against the pillaging of the natural world, and so upon finding an archipelago, one that was far from man's reach, he decided to create a refuge from mankind's excesses, thereby creating a resourceful community in Amelia. When Bunting is inquired about Kahua, he tells the group how his great-grandfather also fancied himself a gamekeeper of sorts and had hopes of transforming Kahua into his personal hunting preserve by bringing in exotic animals, most of which didn't survive. Bunting adds that no one has set foot on Kahua for a long time, and then turns his focus back on Amelia again, adding that they're lucky to have everything they need on their island. As Soames and her team bid goodbye to Bunting and his people to return to the ship, a female servant discreetly manages to tell Soames to come back and take her away. Of course, this shocks Soames, but she doesn't act on it. That night, the hunters headed over to Kahua via speedboats. Right after they get off their boats, the group is seen activating their cooling units and switching to night vision. While exploring the jungle, Nakai's unanticipated encounter with a tiger scares the shit out of him, and the incident ends up allowing Swain to pull Nakai's legs. However, their riposts are cut short when one of the team members gets impaled with a spear by the predator. Of course, this has the team resorting to special goggles that let them see the predator in active camo. They go after the predator while shooting at it and manage to wound the creature seriously, but by then, the predator has already sliced another team member using his blade. Following the blood trail, Herrera is able to blow the predator's head off and is surprised to find that the dead predator predator had none of the expected high-tech weapons at its disposal. This is also when the strike team chances upon the prisoner inside the cage, and while they free him and assure him that he's safe and that they've killed the predator, the man informs them that there are 3 more predators on the island. 3 heads are better than 1. The 4th chapter begins with Herrera informing Soames, who's on board Durga, of their current status, how they've killed a predator, how they've recovered a human prisoner in the process, and that 3 more predators are present on the island, with Soames asking the strike team to check the dead predator and the camp and take possession of all the equipment they find there. Swain tells Soames that the only gears left are spears and wooden masks. By now, the prisoner has been repetitively telling the group that they have to leave the camp area right away, but before the group can do that, they get ambushed by the remaining predators. Herrera tells the team to get back to the speedboats as fast as they can, believing that once they get back into the jungle, the predators won't be able to see them anymore because of their cold suits. However, he's quickly proven wrong when the predators begin to pursue them. Swain, on the other hand, is asked to stay behind and aid Herrera in catching up and escaping with the group. But when Swain sees one of the predators brutally killing a soldier and then looking at him directly afterward, he gets paralyzed with fear and runs away, thereby letting the predators take away Herrera with them. Graves, on the other hand, separates herself from the group to go after Swain and Herrera. When she finds Swain running towards her, she asks him about Herrera, and Swain tells her that he's gone and that they have to leave right away as the predators are right behind him. Graves tells Swain to go to hell and goes looking for Herrera. Soon, she faces a predator and pulls out a combat knife, challenging the creature for a fight. But before the duel can take place, Nakai arrives and hurls a grenade at the predator. Despite Graves telling Nakai that she has to die, Nakai forcibly drags her back to where the speedboats are. Nakai keeps asking Swain and Graves about Herrera, but both remain silent throughout their journey to Durga. As for Herrera, he's held upside down by the 3 predators. With one of the predators roaring at him, Herrera abuses it, but that only leads to his ear getting sliced off by one of the predators, who adds the dismembered ear to a twig containing other victims' ears. Meanwhile, after the strike team return to the ship, Graves charges Swain, holding him responsible for leaving Herrera back on the island. Swain retorts back with a stream of insults, and with Soames finally asking Swain what happened back at the island, Swain tells her that while he didn't see Herrera, he did witness one of the predators killing a team member and tear apart the skull and spine from his body. However, with the predator making direct eye contact with him, Swain admits to Soames that he froze and that the whole thing seemed to be like Afghanistan all over again. With Soames confused, Swain tells her that he lied to her about his heroic encounter with the predator, further stating to her that he was never unconscious and that he purposely hid himself from the predator while the alien hunter continued to take its trophies. Swain also comes clean about the fact that he did have his chance, and had he wanted, he could have taken out the predator, but instead he took the coward's way out to save his own skin. Nakai, on the other hand, goes to talk things out with Graves, who tells him that she wishes to die and be with her team that got slaughtered at the hands of the bad blood predator. Nakai comforts Graves and tells her he often wonders why he was the sole survivor of his encounter with the big game predator. He tells Graves that he thoroughly believes that he was spared back then so that he can kill every last predator that exists on the planet. Now, while all this is happening, the prisoner that the strike team had rescued from the island earlier goes to Soames and tells her they must leave immediately, with Soames assuring the prisoner that he's safe with them and that it's the people of Amelia who need protection from the predators. The prisoner loses his temper with her, while he's seen telling Soames that she doesn't know what she's talking about and that the whole thing is a show of the inhabitants of Amelia in the first place. A horde of canoes with humans in predator attire are seen approaching the ship from all sides. The human factor. The 5th chapter starts with Dr. Henry Bunting announcing that his people have surrounded Durga from all sides, and he strictly warns the crew not to resort to any of the weapons they've stashed aboard against him and his men. Bunting also states that he has explosives attached to the hull of the vessel and gives a demo, blasting one of the explosives. Bunting's men have also boarded the ship by then and are seen seizing the crew one after the other. While Soames, Swain, Nakai and Graves are taken as prisoners back to Kahua, Bunting tells his special guest that he's planned a ceremony in their honor, one that's become more like a tradition for uninvited visitors. With Soames still unable to understand the gravity of the situation, she tries to warn Bunting that he has no idea what he's dealing with. This naturally has Bunting narrating to her a story about his great-grandfather once again, but this time he makes sure that he doesn't leave behind any detail. Bunting begins with how his great-grandfather Malcolm found the colony and literally broke his back to build it. It was also during this time that Malcolm noticed an alien ship crashing into the ocean just off the coast of Amelia Island. While the ship sank, 7 predators somehow managed managed to swim to the shore. The colony regarded them as devils from hell, but to Bunting's great-grandfather, they were visitors from another world. It wasn't long before the predators were at their business, busy skinning the island inhabitants, and as an act of retaliation, Malcolm rallied the colony and fought the predators. Many colonists died while bringing down the predators, and somehow the battle made the colonists strong, primal, and way too violent in nature. So much so that the colonists started developing bloodlust and even enjoyed the hunt. After killing 3 predators, Malcolm devised a plan to fulfill his game preserve idea with the remaining 4 predators. He had them captured, starved, and transported to Kahua Island. While initially Malcolm brought in imported animals and had the predators hunt them for sport, a century later, the predators were thriving, and it was like they were born to hunt, survive, and kill. In due course, the inhabitants of Amelia began to view the predators as their teachers and began to imitate their ways. That's how uninvited visitors in the area became a game for Bunting and his people to hunt. And no points for guessing, he now has the same plans for Soames and his crew. Upon reaching Kahua, Bunting and his men hand Soames, Swain, Nakai, and Graves machetes, along with a head start. Somewhere deeper in the jungle, the predators are seen holding a funeral for their fallen comrade when they hear Bunting's men whooping. 2 of the predators are seen leaving immediately for the hunt, but the third one decides to stay back and honor the death of its fellow Yauja. We come back to Soames and a team, who are now seen running as fast as they can. Rather than running together and getting butchered in unison, the group decides to split up. Graves is the first one to be discovered by the psychotic inhabitants of Amelia, but she manages to kill them both. Next, Nakai is seen attacking 3 islanders with his machete, but he alerts himself upon hearing footsteps close by. As for Soames, she's pursued by a bunch of the islanders and almost meets her end at their hands, but a predator intervenes in the situation, kills the islanders, and spares her life, telling her to leave from there. Soames leaves immediately, but encounters another islander up ahead, but the latter takes off her mask and is revealed to be the female servant who had discreetly asked her to come back and take her away from the island earlier. Introducing herself as Artemis, she tells Soames to follow her and that she has a boat. Artemis takes the boat back to Durga and tells Soames to stay hidden under a tarp. Eventually, Artemis is able to distract one of the guards on the ship while Soames finds her way to the weapons room, with Artemis stabbing the guard and Jaya shooting another one. Both are able to hold the rest of Bunting's men on the ship at gunpoint. This has Soames taking command over Durga once again and freeing the crew, who were being held as prisoners on the ship. After filling up a duffel bag with undisclosed items that Soames states are parting gifts for the hosts, she takes a helicopter back to Kahua and opens fire on Bunting and the remaining islanders. Bunting remains unharmed, but not for long, because Graves eventually catches up with him and kills him with her machete. We come back to Nakai, who was earlier shown being pursued by 2 of the predators. With Nakai reaching what looks like the edge of a cliff, he turns back and faces the predators, gearing himself for a final battle against them. But all of a sudden, Swain emerges out of nowhere and finally, having overcome his fears, impales one of the predators with a spear and sends the creature to fall down the cliff. Of course, this has Nakai highly stunned but also happy at the same time. Soon, Soames arrives there in the helicopter and has the second predator gunned down. With Swain and Nakai getting onto the helicopter, Graves compliments Swain, having witnessed his little star turn earlier. The third predator is seen arriving at the spot soon after, and Graves is almost about to shoot it down when Soames prevents her from doing so, further stating that the predator saved her life earlier and that had it not been for it, they would have all been dead by then. Soames also adds that the third predator was also the prisoner of the psychotic islanders, just the way they were, and it's the creature's right to deserve a little bit of dignity. Soames throws the duffel bag at the predator before the group leaves the island on the chopper. The issue ends with the last remaining predator opening up the bag and finding all kinds of modern predator equipment, after which it puts on the wrist gauntlet and activates the self-destruct device. Predator Hunters 2 Explored. A new war on terror has begun. Somewhere in eastern Afghanistan, a group of jihadi extremists are seen taking a man as a hostage to behead him on camera. With the man repeatedly telling them that they've made a mistake and that he's a construction engineer from Canada, the group tells him that they're aware of his real identity, CIA agent Robert Fournette. Just when the jihadis are about to behead the man, a predator makes a swift grand entry and butchers everyone, leaving just the horror-struck man behind. Next, the readers get to enjoy a panoramic view of Jaya Soames' private family island, which is nestled in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Jaya is in the midst of a conversation with many of the members of the Hunters, who have decided to desert her in the mission to hunt down every living predator on Earth. Most of the members have been quite shaken up by the events in the Amelia Islands. Having had so many casualties, many members make up their minds to leave right away, despite Jaya offering them more money. It's fitting to state that the only remaining members left behind are Tyler Swain, Enoch Nakai, Andy Graves, and Artemis, besides Jaya. Of course, Jaya and Graves aren't entirely sure sure if having Swain on the team would be a good idea, given that he majorly screwed up in Amelia, and let's not dare disregard the fact that he lied about his predator encounter in Afghanistan to begin with. But despite that, Jaya ends up giving him another chance, letting him stay in for the next mission. Afterward, Jaya shows the group a gnarly video recording of the jihadis getting butchered in eastern Afghanistan by the predator and asks the squad if they're up for another mission in Afghanistan. While even the name of the place brings back bad memories for Swain, he's determined to redeem himself, so the team ends up traveling to Afghanistan. Upon reaching Jalalabad, the group is warmly greeted by guide Maluk, who drives them to the foothills of the Hindu Kush. On the way, Maluk also informs the team that there haven't been any jihadi attacks in the area for many days. When the group eventually reaches the foothills of the Hindu Kush, they're surprised to find the whole area swarming with military people. While attempting to figure out who the military guys are, Jaya looks through a binocular and spots a familiar, troubling face at a distance. It becomes pretty clear that she doesn't fancy who she sees, but nonetheless, Jaya doesn't divulge much information to her group. However, the only thing she does mention is that their timetable just got shortened. Somewhere deeper within the foothills of Hindu Kush, gunshots can be heard from inside a cave. A jihadi extremist is seen screaming at the top of his lungs and constantly firing at someone. He trips down to find a multitude of corpses of his comrades. He knows his end is near, so he takes out a sharp-edged knife while saying out his prayers loudly. The issue ends with a full-length image of a predator, one that's more than ready to attack with its double wrist blades. A deadly three-way game of cat and mouse. The second chapter begins with a voiceover of Maluk set against a backdrop of a bunch of jihadi soldiers getting ambushed and slaughtered by a predator. In the present, Maluk takes the group to a village where the locals believe that an unknown force that they've been citing as a jinn is accountable for safeguarding them from the emerging jihadi activities. Maluk takes Jaya, Nakai, and Graves to speak to the local village headman, the Malik, in order to gather more information on the jinn. As for Swain, he encounters a handicapped young boy named Atal and is surprised to find him speaking so fluently in English. Atal tells Swain that his father, who was killed in a mortar attack, studied at the university and translated for the Americans. Looking at Atal's amputated leg, Swain feels quite sorry for him, and one can easily make out the duo instantly forming a connection with each other. While Swain is seen learning from Atal that he wishes to go to Canada to have proper and easy access to good healthcare and escape the conflict that the country has endured for countless years, we, as the readers, find the lone predator, branded by the locals as the Jinn, going inside what looks like an old Taliban cave. The Jinn has a horde of human skulls inside a net-like sack and is seen arranging its trophies one after the other, after which it takes off its helmet and reveals its ever-appalling face to the readers. We also get to see countless weapons and ammunition stored inside the cave. Anyway, coming back to Atal and Swain, both are still conversing when the rest of the group members come back. The young boy's eagerness to help the group catches Jaya's attention, who's quite taken aback when she learns from him that he doesn't consider the Jinn a savior, unlike what most other locals believe. Atal states that the Jinn is nothing but a killer that has its own style of hunting and that he's gone to the mountains and been a witness to what the Jinn does to those it kills. With him further stating that he'll take the group to its lair, Swain convinces the group members to help the young boy get to Canada as a favor in return. Next, when a low-flying drone flies right above the group, Jaya has no choice but to disclose to her team members that they're not the only ones looking for the predator. The reason she's been in such a hurry to take on the particular mission is because a well-funded, serious gear American Black Ops team has also been assigned to hunt down the creature. Eventually, it gets revealed that the man Jaya had previously spotted via the binoculars is the team's strike leader, and the Black Ops team isn't here to kill the predator. Instead, they're here to harvest the technology for clandestine military purposes. Jaya also discloses that while her own family's fortune was also built on the sale of some of the predator technology, this makes her family's legacy stained with blood. That is what has made her promise to use her fortune and go to every extent she can to prevent further tech from falling into the wrong hands. The issue ends with Jaya and her team concocting a plan to keep the Jinn inside the bottle. Mountains of Madness. The third chapter begins with 3 Black Ops helicopters heading somewhere, and this time we actually get to have a peek inside. Needless to say, the men inside the helicopters have one thing literally nailed to their foreheads. They're there for the gear. On the other hand, Jaya and the team, along with Atal, are seen traveling via road through rough terrain when they hear the sound of the helicopters above them. Jaya asks Maluk to pull over and notices the Black Ops helicopters flying past them. Despite believing that the Black Ops team would reach the Predator's lair before them, Jaya decides to carry on with the journey, but Atal claims that the Black Ops team will not be finding the Jinn's lair, as that only happens to be a jihadi cave complex, and that the Predator's actual lair is somewhere in the northwestern direction. Atal also tells the group that they have to travel some distance on foot, and that it's essential on their part to reach the lair before nightfall. Now, the team isn't exactly too keen on having Atal accompany them, given his young age, so they tell him that the minute they get close, Atal can point the way and go back home with Maluk. However, Atal's determined to go with them and insists that if he doesn't, they'll keep wandering for weeks and not find the jinn, further adding that the jinn will surely find them. We come back to the Black Ops team that's found their way to the jihadi complex entrance. The men are asked to proceed with caution, firearms and also net tasers, but the minute they go inside, a pungent stench and some buzzing noise makes them realize that there's a massive pile-up of dead bodies being stored there. The grisly sight isn't for the squeamish, and truth be told, it's a tad much even for the team, but they decide to proceed anyway. Upon scanning the whole complex, they come across more dead bodies and realize that the jinn doesn't live there. The men are asked to head back, and they come out in the open, ready to board the helicopters, but by then, the jinn has already set its sights on its new targets. What follows next is a brutal bloodbath, and the entire team is wiped out. It's also around the same time that the readers are taken back to the islands in the South Pacific, where a military team was seen combing the wreckage of the island in the earlier issues. While initially the team didn't find anything and was almost on the verge of returning, somebody's hand emerged from underneath the rubble, asking the men for help. Anyway, we come back to Jaya and her team, and they're seen traveling on foot now. From a distance, they see an explosion taking place and realize that the Black Ops team has run afoul of the jinn. Well, this gives Jaya an idea, and she realizes that her team actually has the time to wire the Predator's lair and bring the whole place down when it comes back. The third issue ends with the Predator massacring every individual it sets its eyes on and giving them shockingly painful deaths. Fair to say, no one from the Black Ops team survives the ambush. The end of the game. On the way to the jinn's lair, Atal tells Swain that there are many landmines there and that he's marked many of them in the valley below. Swain is surprised by Atal's bravery and learns that it was a mine that took his leg and made him handicapped in the first place. With the group reaching an old Taliban cave, which happens to be the jinn's lair, Atal is asked to go back home for his own safety, and the group goes inside the cave. Jaya tells everybody to stay alert and have the night vision equipment all set. When the group enters, they find the Predator's spaceship and a vast accumulation of junk, all taken from the Predator's previous encounters. Swain's surprised to find a cap of one of his fallen comrades from when he was earlier posted in Afghanistan. This has Swain realizing that the Predator they're currently dealing with happens to be the same one that murdered his squad years ago, while he hid out of fear. Not wanting to waste any more time, Jaya asks Nakai to set charges so as to bury the place, but only if it was that easy. Before the group is able to blow up the creature's base, the jinn comes back and ambushes them. The Predator engages with them in an intense firefight, resorting to its plasma caster. Swain is more than charged this time and is hell-bent on eliminating the jinn. With the group blowing up the cave, Swain excitedly says aloud that the Predator will not be able to go back to its home anymore as his spaceship is wholly destroyed. Atal returns to the cave to Swain's horror and tells him that he can't leave him there. With Swain telling Atal that there isn't any way out of there, Atal tells him that there is, and that it's through the minefield, further stating that he's marked the explosive mines with flags. The plan is to draw the jinn to its doom, and Atal tells Swain to run behind him and match his steps to escape from there. Swain forcibly makes the jinn follow him to tempt it into stepping on a mine, but he isn't successful. Upon finding a mine right in front of him, Swain draws out his combat knife and engages in a face-off. The jinn charges at Swain and steps on a mine, which leads to its immediate death. As for Swain, he ends up getting fatally injured in the process. A tearful Atal stays with Swain during the latter's final moments. Swain is happy that he finally gets to be with his old squad. After the team holds a burial for Swain, Jaya offers Atal to come with her to her island. However, Atal refuses and tells Jaya that he's made up his mind to stay in Afghanistan to visit his grave and pay respect to his sacrifice. The issue ends with the group returning to Jaya's island and getting reunited with Rafael Herrera, whom they thought to have died back in the Amelia Island incident. For those of you wondering whose hand had earlier emerged from underneath the rubble when the military guys were investigating the islands, it becomes clear that it was Herrera who had asked for help. Marvelous verdicts. Well, that's all for today, and with this, we finally come to the end of our video here. So, did you find the comics interesting enough? What do you think about Tyler Swain? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and we sincerely hope you've got your fill of Predator lore for today. Now, if you enjoy this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us, as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching. Have a nice one.